Strategy Sessions by Thirsty Bandit Consulting. Episode 22, Emotional Design. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Strategy Sessions by Thirsty Bandit Consulting. This is episode 22, and as always, I am joined by Rachel Brown. Miss Rachel, how are you today?
I am doing well, thank you. It's March.
The Ides of March.
Holy smokes. Was
I know.
February like this for you? Was it like, wasn't even real? Or is that just me?
I think we've talked about this in a previous podcast where I feel like I'm in this time vortex where time is both very fast and very slow at once. You know, there's the old saying, like when you have kids, that the days are long and the years are short. And I feel like that is just life in general for me. I don't know how to explain it any more than that. I try not to think about it too much because it's depressing, quite frankly, sometimes when you think about it too much. That's actually a really interesting segue into this episode, Rach. But I'm going to start off today's podcast with a curveball for you. Okay. Favorite Mariah Carey song. Favorite Mariah Carey song. Go.
Oh my God. What is it? Hang on. I'd give my all.
This is giving our guest time to think about her favorite Mariah Carey song too, by the way. Did you have one? I'm sorry. Did you say?
It's either I'd give my all or Fantasy. Either one.
Ooh, like all right. Now, original Fantasy or the ODB Fantasy with like the rap interlude?
Oh, I don't know if I've listened to that version. I just just the straight Mariah version.
Okay. All right. Well, one of my favorites, I'm not gonna sing and I'm not gonna play it because I don't want copyright infringement. Starts with "You've Got Me Feeling Emotions Deeper Than I've Ever Dreamed of." Oh, you've got me feeling emotions higher than the heavens above. You know what song that is?
I'm not sure.
Okay. It's very easy. It's called Emotions. So, right. And that's not just for, for the ease of the topic. I mean, I really do enjoy that song. And actually Drake did a song that like samples that called Emotionless, which is also an interesting one. So if you haven't listened to that, that's an interesting, maybe listen to the original Mariah Carey, decide
I'll
which
send
one.
you my notes.
Yes. But we are not emotionless, right? We are emotional human beings. And as much as I think of this time vortex with like raising my kids and like running a business and living life, I'm an emotional dude. And I think I'm comfortable in that. But I think that as hospitality professionals, being in tune with emotions is really important. So today we're going to channel our inner Mariah. Right. And we're going to dive into the world of emotional design. I knew when we started season 2 of Strategy Sessions that I wanted to tackle emotional design in some capacity because I feel like, one, it's become, one of those new buzzwords in our industry. It's like, what are we doing to tap into emotions? It used to be experiential and now it's emotional. And so I started doing some research. What we like to do on the show is we bring in guests from outside of wine and hospitality a lot to kind of view things from a different vantage point. And as I was doing my research, I came across several like really interesting articles, right? That kind of talks about how design like taps into human emotions and kind of the psychology, right? To create products and ultimately experiences that resonate more deeply with us. But I came across this doctor, believe me, I think this might be our first doctor on our show, Dr. Teresa Alaniz, who has she's written books. She did her PhD research in management engineering, specifically on how to strategically understand how emotions are used in the practice of design. And now these are designed for like large tech products and digital style products, and systems, not necessarily what we deal with, like touchy-feely emotional stuff, right? I mean, her regular day job is director of design delivery for NiEW, which is a strategic consulting firm based in Italy and Abu Dhabi that does this stuff all the time, right? They build systems and teams and operating models, all with the idea of kind of driving product innovation. And that book that she wrote that I mentioned was called Emotion-Driven Innovation, a methodology to envision emotion-focused new product ideas. So the more I read about her, I'm like, I have to reach out to her and see if she will come on our little fledgling podcast here in the States and talk about hospitality. And her initial response, as many outside of industry are like, interesting. I don't do hospitality. I don't really know much. I mean, I go to cafes and bars and restaurants and have the experiences like that, but are you sure you want me on this podcast? And the answer was yes, absolutely. You're an expert. We want to talk to experts, and we'll talk about the hospitality stuff. You talk about all of the things you've dedicated your career and life to. So with that introduction, I would love to introduce you, Rachel, to Dr. Teresa Alaniz. Teresa, thank you so much for joining us all the way across the Atlantic Ocean in a much different time zone than ours. But we appreciate you joining us on Strategy Sessions this morning.
No, thank you to you both, Rachel and Curry, for the invitation and for the interest on my work. I am very happy to have this conversation with you from, like what you say, from a different perspective on how emotions can be influence people. And I make a note of the song of Mariah Carey because I haven't heard that song. So now I need to go and listen it after the podcast. Yes.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, you were certainly familiar with Mariah Carey, though, prior to this, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, I wanted to pick an international superstar that I think would transcend geographic boundaries, and she's certainly one of them. So yeah, absolutely. Listen to the song and let us know what you think. I just thought that the chorus ties really, really into what we want to talk about today, which is feeling emotions and feeling deeper, right, than maybe you thought to feel about a product or experience. And so I think really to set the stage for the conversation today, I would love to know, from your perspective, how would you define emotional knowledge within within the context of what you do day to day, which is product design? And really why you feel that human emotion has become one of these critical factors, right? We're creating products or experiences that needs to resonate with humans today.
So probably I will try to put a building block on my explanation to explain what are emotions first. And I will try to explain in a more simple way, if possible.
Sure.
Imagine that emotion are events that people experience. That events happens in two phases. The first one is the trigger, so the stimulus that provoke that emotion. And the second phase is the emotional reaction, so how you behave, your gestures, your vocabulary after you experience that trigger. That trigger or stimulus can be a product, a person, or a situation. And this is a key point because if we are saying that it could be an object or a situation, that translates to a product or to a service, for example, that can be, trigger emotions. I think that is the first key to the answer. The second, you mentioned how I can define emotional knowledge in the context of product design. Probably I will mention one of the skills that is called emotional granularity, which is the ability to understand first your own emotions and how you react when you are experiencing those emotions, but as well the emotional states of others. Why emotions are important? Because emotions in human beings, as you mentioned, are like sensors. So when you feel good about something or someone, you immediately wanted to spend more time with that person or visit that place, or buy again that product because you feel good. But if you feel that your well-being is threatened or diminished, you don't want to spend more time with that person, or you don't want to come back to that restaurant, or you are basically disengaging. So that sensors tell us that those emotions are important to take into account when you are designing new products or new services. A part of, I think, the knowledge of emotions in product design, there is something happening now in the market in the work that I do, but I think it's something that probably maybe you can relate as well. There is abundance in choices. So there is a lot of, in products you can, maybe there are, I don't know, 10 products from the same category. There are 10 restaurants that you can choose. There are a lot of experience. So when there is this abundance, it means that there are something else that people is questioning or they want when they are choosing one product versus the other. So connecting to that, products provoke emotions, and then those emotions can move us towards or move us away. And then thinking that emotions can as well make us selecting one product versus the other, I think it is important to consider in the product design.
That's really interesting. Rachel and I, obviously, a lot of our work is with wineries, and you have this. You basically have two different styles of touch points. And Rach, you and I have talked about this before, which is you've got a shelf presence, you have a package, you have a tangible item that sits on a shelf that you're trying to hopefully evoke emotion from, and get them to grab the bottle and turn it around and see it and feel it with their hands. But then you also have the in-person experience in a tasting room or a wine bar or a venue. And what's really important is how the two of those work with one another. And can you call back experience or emotion from the time that you were in the tasting room that will prompt you then to pick that bottle up off the shelf in a restaurant or in a grocery store or in a wine shop? Or conversely, will the bottle evoke the emotion and drive you to a point where you want to go physically experience that space? And so they're two very different environments that you have the ability to influence in person. And so I think it's certainly unique for our winery partners, I think more so, or really any hospitality and consumer packaged goods CPG partner that has both, right? Has an in-person experience and has an on-shelf presence.
Yeah, I think what you are managing is very interesting. Sorry, Rachel.
Sorry. No, you go. You're the expert. I was just going to chime in and talk about storytelling. So please, no, go.
No, I think what you are managing is very interesting because on the work that I do is all digital. So we work with digital products. Sometimes it's as well with some machines, but not all the time. And I think what you are having is an ecosystem when you have more touch points in which you can create those emotions with people. You have more opportunities, basically.
Rachel, what were you going to say about storytelling?
Oh, just when you're in there and you have the product, I always think about the coffee that we used to have that has, was it your grandmother or Gretchen's grandmother, on the front?
My wife's grandmother. Yeah.
That picture, and people would look at it and they would be like, oh my gosh, this is really cool. And then they're already kind of gravitated to it, just off the bat because of just one, how beautiful that picture was. And then asking and then being able to relay the story of what this was. And people are like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna I love that, just the connection of what it does and how something like that, I don't even want to say simple because it's not a simple thing, can evoke that much. It's just really neat to be able to watch someone experience that from the other side of oh my gosh, you resonate with this thing. It's really, really neat.
Well, I mean, what we're really talking about also is, the other buzzword that's really been beaten to death, right? Which is authenticity. Because, if you're able to capture that degree of earnest authenticity on a package design, that it means something to the people who designed it, and you're trying to convey that emotion to your consumer, that's when it works the most. Fabricating or synthesizing authenticity just as a buzzword, I think most consumers, because of exactly what Teresa had said earlier, there's so many options. There's this abundancy of options now that I think that consumers are skilled enough to know if it's real or if it's not, or they will figure it out in a very short term.
Well, I think this kind of can lead into a little bit more of a thought of do you think that companies are just still designing for function and customers are choosing based off of emotion, and what are they missing? Is there a misfire happening between the two entities? Customers want emotion, companies are going for just functionality, but they're not talking to each other anymore.
So I think I will say yes and yes. So I think companies are designing for function and people are choosing based on emotion. I think that companies should still have functionality at the core of the design process, because I think if I am buying a coffee machine, for example, um, and that coffee machine doesn't make the coffee, so it fails at the core function, so I don't want to engage anymore with the brand. I didn't even arrive to the emotional experience. So I think companies should keep functionality at the core of the design process. What I think has been missing, but maybe now, thanks to the abundance, companies are starting to pay attention on the emotional layer. It is that they can add this emotional job. It is this concept in which you define how you want your customers or your users to feel when they are experiencing the service or the product. So I think when probably, yes, they can still design for function, but add the emotional layer as well at the same level. What I experience or what I see is that if the functionality or the utility is the one that help you to compete on the market. So you are a restaurant that serves meals in this geographic area. You can correct me or you can add a better example on this, and you can compete with the other restaurants. But if you add the emotional layer, is the one that will make you be different in that market. So I think both should be there, because I think functionality is important, but emotional layer is the one that can make the difference for you and your customers.
I actually have a great example for both of you. I mean, we're currently working on a coffee shop, a cafe design project, and we've been spending a lot of time thinking about both functionality and feel within the physical space. And because of how accustomed consumers are now to ordering on their phone and picking up, or they're looking for seamlessness and convenience, and that includes when they walk through the door. They may not be there for sitting down, enjoying a warm mug in their hand and a good book. They may be there to get in, grab their to-go cup, and get back on their way in their vehicle. And so it's very important to design for both. You need to design for efficiency and the ability for someone to park, run in, grab what they need, and leave. But then you also need to design for mindfulness and moments where they can take their time and sit and enjoy their surroundings. And that's not easy when you're confined to square footage and you're trying to be a little bit something for everyone. But the reality in doing business in hospitality, in food and bev, in 2026 is that you need to be thinking about both of them. And I would argue that on the digital space, it also applies because, apps and, access to business information and the information that you want to sell, whether that with your direct to consumer provider, if you're shipping wines to clients or doing subscription based, coffee programs or subscription based wine club programs, you need to make that experience very smooth and easy, because the adoption rates will drop substantially if they can't figure it out first try. But how do you do that, right? When you also want them to have a connection and feel the brand come through, right? So there's that balancing act. I kind of want to lead into one of your quotes though, and allow you to answer kind of part of that question too. I love this quote from you, Teresa. When our vocabulary for emotion is limited, our capacity to design for it becomes limited too. It's like painting with only 3 colors when the emotional world offers 19, right? And you talked a little bit earlier. Decision makers and creators and operators may not currently, right now, have the emotional vocabulary to intentionally design. So how can they get there? How can they think more in terms of this? How can they expand their vocabulary, emotionally speaking, to develop a more meaningful experience, whether it's in the coffee shop or on their website or on an app? Like, what are the things that they need to do in order to expand that vocabulary?
Mhm. Maybe here I will jump into very practical thing. I think it is important to, if you work on either in product design or experience design or on your area, probably is to embrace a framework of emotions. So to be specific about that. I mentioned 19 on my quote of the article because it's the framework that I have on my book. It is 19 positive emotions. So first is to embrace one framework of emotions, the one that you like, and then try to describe the experiences through those lenses. So use that vocabulary to see how that experience was. Instead of using general words like the good or the bad or happy or the wow effect, I think it is important to have those nuances to differentiate how we feel. Like if I think on the journey of a person that is buying the coffee that you mentioned before, probably there are some points in which that nuances of emotions are important. Maybe when I am opening the app and it's saying like hello in a certain way, even if I am buying the coffee very quickly on the restaurant, there is an opportunity to trigger the emotion. So first is to have that nuances of emotions. If we work a lot on brainstorming when we are doing product design. So I don't know if in your area as well, when you are thinking of new services, you as well are having your team and you both maybe doing brainstorming about the new services that you want to offer or products that you want to put. I will suggest to grab that framework of emotions, and before ideating, you select from 2 to 4 to say, okay, these are the emotions that resonate with my brand or that I want to provide with my audience. And then work on the ideation process, because then your ideas will flow towards that those emotions to provoke, let's say, on the journey. And then I think it is also important to understand that emotions can be provoked at a different stages or different interactions. In my book, I call 3 of them. One is the aesthetic, behavioral, and symbolic interaction. I think symbolic will resonate a lot of with you. The aesthetic is when you perceive the product, and it's through your body, through your senses. So what you feel, what you touch, what you taste, it makes you feel something, and it's important. But it's the first, let's say, reaction and emotion that you can have towards a product that you are experiencing. The second is the behavioral. So in product design is when I am using the product, when I press a button, what sounds it makes, the colors I see, if I can clean it properly, if I don't know, if the product communicates well, the task that it's doing. So how it behaves and how I feel about that. I feel confident, I feel relaxed, or I feel frustrated. So the behavioral interaction is the other point. And then there is the symbolic interaction. So in the symbolic, in the difference to the previous ones, there is not a moment on time. On the previous one, there is a specific, when you taste it enough, you feel something, or when you use it. In the symbolic is related to the values of the product or the values of the brand, for example, or it is about if the product, the service, or the brand represents something for people. It is connected to my identity. It is connected to my values. It is, I don't know, yes, connected to something meaningful to me. And this is when products can as well work on creating emotional attachment with people. So I think that is like these different steps, having a framework of emotion, use those in your vocabulary, even to express your personal experiences. Start with defining emotions before ideating, and then understanding that you have these opportunities on different interactions to provoke the emotions.
I love that. I love that. I was thinking about the brainstorming process and putting those 19 emotions up on a board and asking a team, pick from these. What are the ones? What do you want the customer to feel when they open your bottle, when they come into your space, when they interact with you online? What are the ones? And then using that to guide the strategic planning process, using that to guide how they develop, whether it's package design, tasting notes, in-person experiences, right? I mean, I think that's a really cool way to go about a planning process.
Yeah,
I think also it opens a deepened conversation in the team, no? Sorry, Rachel, again.
Nope, that was all I was gonna say. No, I like that a lot. I like thinking about like trying to design to resonate, right? Like you design to make a lasting impact. Like you want to be the brand or the place that people want to go back to over and over again because of what they feel when they're in your tasting room or drinking their wine or buying tickets to your programs. Like that's what you want, right? Like you want to create that kind of like sense of belonging, or they feel comfortable, or they feel open, they can ask questions. Like we talk about this all the time, right? Like we're stewards in somebody else's journey. So the more that we can open ourselves up and feel and do all these things, the better that connection is going to be for everybody involved.
Yeah.
I think too, like we can, we're all we feel so much.
You guys are sharing a brain on this podcast. I love it.
I know. We are like,
it's nice not to be the one. It's nice for me not to be the one accidentally talking over people and watching you go through this, Rach, because it's usually
thank
me
you.
fumbling through.
I was gonna say, like we could like apply this, right? So like if we're thinking about hospitality and wine experiences, right? Like what emotions do you think operators are like overlooking? And then how can you, and we kind of touched on this a little bit, but like how could you design for those emotions so that way guests like want to keep returning over and over and over again?
So I don't know if those emotions are overlooked. Probably you can tell me, but I can think of a few emotions
Even from
in
a
your
personal
industry.
experience. Yeah, I mean, from a personal experience. I mean, Teresa, you and I, prior to this, we had a chat, and even though you're not in industry, right? I mean, you visit cafes, you visit bars and restaurants, right? I mean, in your own personal experiences, do you feel that there are any emotions that have been overlooked in those spaces?
I think yes. I think where you work creating a journey. So before you offer that experience, that wine experience, there is, I don't know, the booking process or the awareness of the experience. It's a whole journey that you offer. And on that journey, from my personal experience, I think there is one emotion that for me will be important before the experience, for example, that will be relaxation. Relaxation is the feeling of mental and physical stress. So you just are at ease. You don't have any cognitive load, let's say. Why I think it is important before you go and attend the event or before you go to the experience, because probably if I am booking the experience, for example, this is something that happened to me before, I want to have the whole information of the experience or the place or the venue. If I am paying in advance, probably I want to know clearly what I am paying for, probably to have information clearly about the time, schedules, etc. And if I am booking 3 months in advance, probably a couple of notifications in between to say, hey, everything is fine, your book is here, this is a reminder, etc. That just creates I don't need to think, I don't need to be worried about. I start with a very good start before even going to the experience. And then if I think during the experience, I think two emotions. One is admiration. Admiration usually comes when there is an excellence of something. So when you experience something that is more elevated than the benchmark. And admiration can come maybe on my time, for example, in Italy. I remember an agriturismo is the name of the hotels when they offer wine tasting and maybe food as well there. Then when I admire the places because there is a storytelling, there is a well-curated place, the food is well presented. So everything helps you to admire the service that you are having, and then you remember as well. And then the other emotion that could be as well fun to have is surprise. There are negative and positive surprise, but we are speaking on the positive area. So surprise, it is the unexpected element that give you this sense of pleasure, basically. And why surprise? Because you want to have experiences that are memorable. And surprise gives you this extraordinary thing that you were not expecting, that helps you to remember even over the time, that place that you visit or that experience that you have, that food that you experience. So that I appreciate a lot. In Italy, they are very good at this on their restaurants, or bringing you the detail that you didn't expect or that you didn't order, and then you want to come again because it was a part of it was the surprise. It was just delicious. So yeah, and then the last one as well could be pride. Pride is a very interesting emotion, because the subject of the feeling is the person itself. So when you feel proud, you want to share. You are more willing to share what you experience. You are willing to share what you choose or the restaurant that you visit. You are more willing. That happens to me as well. That it was a pizzeria in Modena. I used to live there, and I always recommend that pizzeria because I feel proud of my choices. For me, it's one of the best there on the town. And then when I recommend, I feel knowledgeable about pizzas. That probably is something simple, but just to explain how the emotion can be the one that speaks about the brand or the service that you are getting in.
I love all of that. And as you're talking, I'm thinking back to my own personal experiences in some of these particular instances. The limoncello, the house-made limoncello at the end of dinner that comes unexpected. The amuse-bouche that the chef brings out that is just an extra course that they throw in that they're very passionate about. The freshly baked cookie on the airline. I was flying, this was years ago. I was flying Midwest Airlines from Washington D.C. to I believe it was Chicago, and they were known at that time for literally baking cookies on flight. And so all of a sudden, you're reaching cruising altitude and you smell cookies in the airline. And they come through and they just hand you a warm cookie. I mean, but it's things like that. And what's always so amazing is that on a balance sheet, right? When you look at P&Ls and you look at expenses, there's no direct correlation between, well, we've sold more seats on this flight, but it's costing us more because we're spending $2 a person on cookies, right? But I mean, that experience for me was 20 years ago, and it still sticks with me. And there was a period of time that anytime I flew towards the Midwestern part of the United States, I always looked for that airline first because of that darn cookie, not for any other reason. And so, and it's super silly, but I think it's so powerful when you can actually tap into it. And while the ROI is hard to connect on a spreadsheet, it's something that becomes intrinsically valued within your brand. And identifying what that thing is, maybe going through those exercises, I think brings wine, hospitality, CPG brands closer to something that is real and sustainable long term, right? You've said before that emotional understanding marks a paradigm shift in how we approach innovation. And we've been talking about a bunch of different ideas here on how hospitality and wine experiences should be rethinking what they're creating, beyond the food, beyond the drink, and really beyond the service. I mean, I want to know though, like, what do you think are those practical first steps that that they should do? Okay, after the planning session, so to speak? Because I mean, I think we've kind of tackled that at length, but um, what do you think that they should be engaged in as those first steps to deliver on that emotional ROI?
Think it's first to put emotion not as a soft layer on your process. I think it's first to understand that emotions can bring not only this emotional ROI but also revenues. It is well known that when people feel good about that place you return, that loyalty it transfers into a financial revenue. So first, I think is to put emotion not as a soft layer but start to pay more attention on how emotions are influencing that people come back, that people buy your product, or I don't know, recommend your experience as well. Because all of that at the end are people that are consuming what you are offering, what you are putting out of in the market. Um, yeah.
No, I think that you're right, and maybe I'm rethinking if that airline would have surveyed and said, "What is it about your experience, with Midwest Airlines, made you want to recommend us?" I mean, we see this obviously in customer satisfaction surveys all the time that you can obviously align qualitative and quantitative data, right? Based upon the questions you ask, and it should provide insight. I mean, anything that you can think of from your experiences in engaging customers on frontline that showed that operators were doing the right things because they were coming forth with the information right out front, like, "I love when you guys do X," or "You guys do this really, really well," and it's something I always tell my friends about, those referral points, like the pizzeria in Moderna that Teresa was talking about.
Yeah, I think, I mean, when I was at Turks, like, one of the things we did was we always, like, if they were wine club, we always sent out an extra amuse-bouche, like, "You're here, you're part of our club, you're loyal." Like, we want to engage with that. If it's an anniversary, if it's a birthday, like, "Hey, like, it's so and so, they're here, like, can I give them an extra pour of something else? Can I go and grab them?" Like, there's such little things, but people, like, are so thankful for that, and I've experienced it on my own, like, just being out in the wild and, like, going to tasting rooms and, like, "I heard you said that you love this. Here's an extra pour." Like, and they're such small things too, but they're so successful because it's like, well, now I wanna send everybody here because I had a great experience. They take the time, and I think too, like, um talking to the people at your table, connecting with them. And we talked about this, I think, in our last podcast of like, "Oh, you're from here. I'm from here. Have you been here? I love this place." Like, the more I think personality you can infuse into what you're doing, the more successful this is going to be. And I think when you remember that we're all people experiencing life at the same time, like going out of your way for someone is the easiest thing in the world to do, which is kind of like my mantra. Like, I want to overserve you. Like, I want to give you that experience that you're like, we got to go back and we have to ask for Rachel when we go. Like, I want to be that person. And when I train my staff, that's what I want them to be too. I want you to have regulars or like put me in so and so section. Like, that tells me from an execution standpoint, we've achieved what we've set out to do.
Yep. Yeah, and word of mouth is so powerful. I mean, we've
Hmm.
spent a lot of time on this podcast talking about how it's probably your strongest marketing tool is that if you can impress upon your customers, they will go out and be your branded, but it's finding the thing that really resonates. Is it
Hmm.
were you gonna add to that?
I wanted to connect with what Rachel was saying about the team, that actually is also important to know what is the vision that of the emotions that you want to provoke on your experience. Because I think if you have clarity on what you want to offer to the customers, and then you communicate that clarity to your staff or to your team, then you have an ecosystem to work towards the same vision, to create the same ambience, to know what is the tone of voice that staff should have. And probably here you can go on and on and making examples. But I think if you have that clarity and then you communicate with your team and your staff, that brings even a richer experience.
Yeah, using a handful of those values as a through line through training.
Hmm.
This is how we want to present. This is what we want the customer to feel, and making sure that that part of the customer journey is felt along the entire process. Um, This has been fantastic. I really have appreciated your time today, Teresa. We've had a lot of fun talking about this. I think that it's given, I know me personally, some really interesting tools, particularly when we go into those introductory or first step meetings, when we engage a client to try to figure out what their goals are. I mean, we by nature, Rachel and I I like to refer to it as holistic consulting, because a lot of times you're asked in to do one thing, like sell more product. Well, everybody wants to sell more product, but until you start to peel back the layers, sometimes you realize that you have to go a little deeper before you can get to the end goal of higher profitability or moving, depleting SKUs or doing things like that. And I think this allows, just again, another tool for people to think differently about how they're positioning their brand, how they're delivering on their experience. And it affects every single product, every single thing we touch, whether it's from the digital side to in person, face to face. And so I hope listeners today are kind of thinking through, right, those moments as well. And I hope they have an opportunity to seek out some of your writing that's online. There's been some really great articles you've published over the last few years on this topic, and maybe go back into their Apple Music and pull up some Mariah Carey jams that they haven't listened to in a few years. I have a feeling there's a few people on this call that will be doing that after this podcast. So we really appreciate your time today. Thanks so much for joining us for strategy sessions. And it was a real pleasure. Don't be a stranger. Hopefully we can connect when we have a client out in Italy. You can meet us at that pizzeria in Moderna. We'd really appreciate that.
I will love that. I obviously suggest I know which one. No, thank you for inviting me and for the interest on my work. I think the questions are very interesting because, as I mentioned to Corey before, you are on a sector that is completely far away from what I am doing right now, but is really interested how this topic can connect as well at the different levels.
Absolutely. Well, folks, that's going to do it for episode 22 of Strategy Sessions. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for joining us for Strategy Sessions. Please comment, like, follow, and subscribe at Perceive and Co.